welcome to the next episode of Monster Kid Radio. This is Derek M. Cook, your producer and host of the podcast where Karloff is king, Bela Lugosi lives, and John Agar rules. How's it going, everybody? So last week we kicked off the show, and I want to say thank you to everybody who had nice things to say about the show and told their friends about it and spread the word over on Facebook. Now, Monster Kid Radio does have a Facebook presence in the form of a group and a page. Now, the page is where we do all the announcements. The group is where we do all the discussions. If you're on Facebook, you can connect with us over there, or you can find us over on our website at monsterkidradio.net. This is something that I haven't brought up yet on the show, but we have an email address. It's monsterkidradio@gmail.com, and we've got a voicemail line. The voicemail phone number is 503-479-5MKR. Of course, you can find that information over on our website, again, monsterkidradio.net, which is where you'll also find links to our Facebook group, as well as our Live 365 channel. Now, if you're not aware of what Live 365 is, basically, it's a radio station. It's internet radio. And I've got a Monster Kid Radio Live 365 channel set up over there. You can listen to that on your smartphone, on your computer, whatever. And what we've got set up over there is a place where you can listen to the best music and sounds from horror, fantasy, and sci-fi films of the 30s through the 60s, and movies that remind us of that era. So if you're into the film scores of these movies as much as I am, you like to hear the occasional movie trailer, head over there, look us up at live365.com, or again, just follow the link from our website. The other thing that you're going to find over at our website, over on the right-hand side of the screen, you see our logo, you know, the Frankenstein's monster kind of pointing at you saying Monster Kid Radio. Directly beneath that, you're going to see a black square. It looks like an old-time on-the-air radio box. Instead of saying on the air, though, it says Monster Kid Radio, and there's a little monster hand kind of reaching up, kind of detached from whatever monster it used to be attached to, reaching up across the light box. Well, I wanted to give a shout out to a really good friend of mine by the name of Tom, who created this box. He didn't tell me he was making it. He just mailed it to me one day, and as soon as I opened it up and turned it on, because it is an actual working light, I danced around my home for about half an hour, being really excited about this thing. So much so that I've actually turned it into one of the logos that we use here at Monster Kid Radio. And if you ever see us at an event, we're going to have this light box at the table, like we did at Wonder Northwest last weekend. So big thanks to Tom for making this wonderful piece of art for us that I spend a lot of time just turning on and off, because, well, it's kind of cool. Okay, so I feel like the business is out of the way. Let's talk about what we've got coming up on this episode of Monster Kid Radio. A couple of weeks ago, I was able to set up a roundtable discussion with filmmaker Christopher R. Mihm and monster maker Mitch Gonzales. Now, these are names that you're probably going to hear brought up on the podcast in the future more than once, because I plan on having them back. Christopher R. Mihm is a director. He's been making these, well, he calls them good, bad movies. I disagree. I think they're good movies, but he's a humble guy. And Mitch Gonzales is responsible for making the monsters in movies like Attack of the Moon Zombies, House of Ghosts, and the recently released, just had its world premiere, The Giant Spider. Now, we recorded this before the premiere of The Giant Spider. Now that the movie is out, you can head over to their website, SaintEuphoria.com. That's Saint, all spelled out. Euphoria is EUPHORIA.com. And don't worry, there will be a link in the show notes of this episode. You can head over to SaintEuphoria.com and pick up a copy of The Giant Spider for yourself if you're interested after you hear the interview. And of course you're going to be interested. It's a good movie. It's probably my favorite movie of Mim's to date. And he's made a lot of them. He's done one a year since, well, you'll hear in the interview. Before we get to part one of that interview, I do want to mention that we have a Monster Kid Radio Crash event coming up this Wednesday, June 5th at 9 p.m. at the Joy Cinema and Pub in Tigard, Oregon. That's at 11959 Southwest Pacific Highway. It's the Joy Cinema. They are doing what they call Weird Wednesday. They are bringing in the movie She Freak from 1967, which is basically a loose remake of Todd Browning's original movie, Freaks. If you're on Facebook, look up the event Monster Kid Radio Crashes She Freak, and you can RSVP, you can look at the trailer that I've posted over there, we can chat about the movie, and I hope to see you there. I'll be there. This is not an official Monster Kid Radio event, that's why we're crashing the show, so I'm not doing any kind of presentation or anything like that, but I'll be there in my Hawaiian shirt, and I'll probably have my portable recorder with me, so if you do come and you do see me, come up and say hi. We'll chat it up and maybe even put you on a future episode of Monster Kid Radio. All right, let's go ahead and get into part one of this interview that we did with Christopher R. Mihm and Mitch Gonzales. Here we go. I'd like to welcome to Monster Kid Radio a couple of my favorite movie makers. I've got Christopher R. Mihm, writer, director, grandmaster of what's become known as the Mimiverse, and Mitch Gonzales, a monster maker for Christopher R. Mihm, and one of the men responsible, well, along with Chris, for one of the most recent movies to be added to my DVD collection. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So before we get into what we're going to talk about here, I want to talk a little bit about what you guys do, if you don't mind.
Sure. I love to talk about myself.
You've been a filmmaker since 2007? Six. Okay. Every year you put out a new movie. Can you tell us briefly what's that all about, man? What do you do?
I've struggled for years to come up with the perfect way to describe exactly what it is I do and how to, just quickly give that elevator speech so people understand my movies and what they are. I've come up with this, and that is I make new, old, good, bad movies, which is, classic 1950s style B movies, black and white, fun, monster movies, basically exactly what Monster Kid Radio is about. But I make them now, as opposed to, back then, which would be impossible.
I was going to say, and the goal is to make them indiscernible to the original, 50s movies, to make them fit right into that pattern.
So I'm assuming you and both of you have a love for this kind of film.
I guess, No, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Very much so.
I agree a total 100%. Yes.
Yeah, Mitch is actually worse than I am, I'll be honest. I mean, he's our encyclopedia of the Mimiverse. You bring up any random weird movie from, say, 1930 on, and he'll shoot out some factoid about it.
Well, and we'll get into that. I'm hoping to kind of plumb the depths of Mitch's brain here in a bit. Now, you've been making some movies since 2006, and Mitch, you came into the fold around 2010 or so, 2009?
About 2009, yes. Yeah, I had started off as a fan of Chris movies. I had met Chris, I think it was in 2007 at a convention. I was stumbling around, came across his table, and at the time I think he had 2 movies done, and he was working on a 3rd movie. So, loving this type of movie, I stopped by, talked to him a little bit, grabbed, my copies. At the time it was The Monster of Phantom Lake and It Came From Another World. Picked those up, took them home, and watched them, and absolutely loved them. And it was the kind of thing where my kids even jumped in and loved them, so we watched that. And I think it was a couple years later then when I finally did get in contact with Chris and say, hey, I make masks, I do this sort of thing. I used to, but it'd be fun to kind of start it back up again and see if I had something I can contribute to the movies. And that's how that came about.
So I want to give our listeners just an idea as to the kind of movies you make by just going through the titles. I've got your filmography from the IMDb right here in front of me. It all started with The Monster of Phantom Lake. We have It Came From Another World, Cave Women on Mars, Terror from Beneath the Earth, Destination Outer Space, the award-winning Attack of the Moon Zombies.
Multi-award winning.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
House of Ghosts, and most recently The Giant Spider. So just listening to these titles alone, they seem to fit right in with that whole 50s sci-fi vibe, whether it be like a Universal kind of thing or one of the other studios. I mean, the titles alone kind of tell you exactly what you're in for with these movies. It's fantastic. Just looking at this list of names.
Like I said earlier, trying to make them indiscernible to early films like AIP releases or such.
Sometimes the films themselves usually start off as just titles because we're making these very specific movies in a very specific style. Getting a good title that grabs people, that really says, hey, can tell you what it is right off the bat, is pretty much somewhat essential to this style. Something like Cave Women on Mars literally started as just a funny title that I was like, I don't know what that is, but I'm making that.
Mitch, you said you came to the movie just kind of finding Chris at a convention. Chris, has it been easy for you to kind of grab a group of people that are into these kinds of movies to form your group of friends and filmmaking colleagues to make these movies?
It's been a gradual process. It wasn't something that just sort of happened overnight. I mean, people have come and go. I mean, these are very low budget movies, so none of us are really getting paid. So there's that. Obviously, some people come and they'll do a movie or two, and then, other stuff happens and they move on. Mitch was one of those people that I was lucky enough to sort of randomly find. I mean, it was creepy at first, of course. Hey, I want to help you with your movies. But, he came in and he's talented as hell. So now we're trying to do anything we can to make sure he doesn't leave.
I'm in for the discussion.
Oh, sweet. See, we got that. That is out there now. It's recorded. It's admissible in court. He's stuck. No, so yeah, we just picked up people along the way, and it's taken 8 years to finally get to a point where I feel like we have a really solid core group of people that are behind the scenes and really understand this and are really pushing to make these movies better and better and better. And I think that's happening as a result. I think obviously when we first started, it was a learning process because even I really didn't know what I was doing back then. And now I feel like at least with 8 movies, I have an inkling of what's going on. So
with a lot of the same people coming back, especially in front of the camera, one thing that I've really enjoyed about your guys' movies is that you'll see characters appear in different films. I mean, the same character appear in different movies. So when we say the Mimiverse, we're meaning that literally these movies all take place in the same universe. Was that an intentional decision from the beginning?
I suppose at the very beginning, I honestly didn't know if I'd make more than one movie, just because it is a lot of work to make a movie, and it was. And it continues to be. So I didn't know at the very beginning when I made The Monster Phantom Lake if that would be, it. My collaborator at the time was Josh Craig, the guy who played Professor Jackson, which is one of the main characters in the movie. He and I always used to joke because we really wanted to make a movie that, we would make one movie and then 5 years later we'd be sitting around with, 1,000 DVDs in our garage laughing about, hey, remember when we made that movie? And then as soon as I started doing it, I kind of hooked on it and couldn't stop. After making the first cheesy 50s style movie, and it was so well received, and I enjoyed the experience so much, I started thinking about the next thing I wanted to do and realized that I just wanted to do another cheesy 50s film. And we ended up making It Came From Another World, which to a certain extent was a sequel to The Monster Phantom Lake. Like, I think most of the characters in that are in The Monster Phantom Lake, and it is in essence a standalone sequel. And so that sort of precipitated making more in this genre, partially because I was like, well, I can at least make a sequel because people love The Monster Phantom Lake so much. Being a sequel, it's to be in the same world. It doesn't make sense if it doesn't. After that, I sort of enjoyed it so damn much that I figured, you know what? I'll just keep doing it, and I'm going to link them all, just in some little way, just because it just sounded like something fun, like this would be a great idea, And after, I think, Cave Moon on Mars, and I sort of made the conscious decision that I wasn't going to do anything other than these cheesy Mimiverse movies, it just sort of, I don't know, expanded from there, I guess.
I know when I originally came on board with the first 2, saw those, and I saw those as the first movie and then kind of a sequel. And then as you started bringing the other ones out, I liked how you started stringing characters together, and a minor character in one movie might have a major role in another, and one offspring, that sort of thing. So I liked when you did that, and I thought it was really cool myself.
Well, and it became one of those things where, a lot of people started to notice that they were all linked. Because, they're written in such a way, and anyone who's listening to this may be like, oh, no, I have to see the first one to see the new one. You don't. I mean, they're written and made in such a way so you can see one at any – I mean, you could literally just watch The Giant Spider now, and you won't be lost at all. You won't have to see any of the others. But if you do, you'll start noticing other cool little subtle things that will link them together and expand your enjoyment of it to a certain extent, but you don't have to. And that's actually the challenge now, is trying to keep them all together in such a way that they're not too, I don't know what the word is. It's too early and I can't think.
Cool nightmare.
Yeah. I want to make sure that people can come in and see any one of my movies and not be lost.
And that's actually where I wanted to go with this. I mean, you've got all these movies, but if you only want to watch one or two, you can. I don't know why you would only want to watch one or two, but you don't have to watch the other movies to know what's going on in the other movies in the library here. And you mentioned The Giant Spider being the most recent film. I'm excited about this one. I mean, this is a big bug movie, which is something that we all enjoy. Can we talk a little bit about what The Giant Spider is about without giving away too many spoilers?
Well, see, there's a giant spider.
Excellent. Okay, no, go ahead.
Well, it's almost like that's enough. I mean, if you like big bug movies from the 50s, that's all you really need to know. There's a giant spider, and people are trying to stop it because it's eating people. We created a story where there's a, say, 15, 20-foot bug that's created by some leftover radiation. Of course, because what else causes, giant bugs in the 50s than radiation? And it starts moving toward the major population center of the Mimiverse, basically. And a group of scientists and a newspaper reporter and an army general trying to stop it before it gets to, as one of the characters put it, to the all-you-can-eat people buffet. And that's it. I mean, that's all you need to know. There's a giant spider, and people are trying to stop it, and we used a real tarantula. That's all you need to know.
Sign me up. Now, with this particular movie, Mitch, you're known for creating a lot of the monsters now. Over the past 3 or 4 movies, you've been doing a lot of the monster work. But Chris just said he used a real tarantula. Were you still able to find a way to work your Mitch magic on this?
Yes, I was. The intention with this was to use a live spider for the action, and also kind of use a insert puppet head a la the Black Scorpion.
Yes.
Where you cut away and you'd have this drooling, this head shot of the actual spider. So, and in keeping with the kind of the Mimiverse creatures, it had to be bug-eyed and had a lot of teeth and things. So it was done in that fashion to kind of link it into the other creatures.
Plus, he made a giant spider leg.
And also, every bug movie has some kind of giant limb coming through a door. And so I fabricated a giant spider leg as well to kind of interact with the actors.
Excellent, man. I can't wait to see the movie. As we're recording this, it's on the way to me. We're actually recording this just before the world premiere. By the time this goes out, everybody can get their own copy of the movie by going to Chris's website. Let's throw that out there real quick. It's sainteuphoria.com, right?
Yes, or if that's hard to spell or remember, if you just go to thegiantspider.com, it'll get you there.
Excellent. That's where you can pick up The Giant Spider and all their other movies. And we'll drop the website address again during this conversation, and it'll be on the website over at monsterkidradio.net, so you can find a way to get your hands on these movies, which, like I said, I can't wait to see The Giant Spider, man, and I hope the premiere goes well. I'm sure it will. By the time this goes out, we'll know for sure, but I'm sure it'll go great.
I'm hoping so. I honestly, I think it's one of my best films. I think it's one of the best things I've ever made. It's snappy, it's entertaining as hell, and I mean, I can be super hypercritical of my work, and I don't really have too many bad things to say about this one. So I'm excited as heck that people can see it, and I think it's going to go over well. I really do.
Well, how many times has your young son seen it already?
Yeah, my 3-year-old son has seen it about 400 times. Maybe not that many, but at least 50 plus. He absolutely adores it. And that's the thing about my movies, kids of all ages can enjoy them. That's not to say they're for kids, but they're, being authentic to the 50s style. You aren't allowed to do extreme nudity or gore or anything like that, beyond, I suppose, what they did. Some of the British films of the 50s were probably the more extreme ones, but it allows for kids to be able to enjoy my films, and actually, like, kids do like my movies because they're, like, I always say this, which is they're scary enough to scare them, but not so much that it'll traumatize them. So yeah, my kids have seen the movie a bunch of times after they've seen it in different forms too, sort of rough cuts to final cut, and they've seen it tons of times, and they love it. And people are going to absolutely adore it.
Well, I was gonna say, I kind of remember bringing the spider puppet over to shoot in the basement. I should say the studio. And
the studio, not
studio.
Furnace.
And as I'm walking in, I know your younger kids are kind of standoffing at it, and then they kind of come up and look at it and poke at it, and then they seem to like it, I think. But at first, there's that kind of, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
So, Mitch, you mentioned one of my favorite big bug movies just a second ago in passing. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but the Black Scorpion movies did you watch? I'm assuming the Black Scorpion is one of them, to find inspiration for what you created for Chris's film.
Well, of course, I had to go back to the library here, and Black Scorpion was one I pulled out and watched. Earth versus the Spider was another one. Tarantula. I think those are probably three of the ones we watched again to get the feel, to get to get the mindset of what we wanted to do. And so those are three great movies, three favorites of mine.
All very arachnid.
Yes.
To get that feel, I'm sure. The Black Scorpion's one of my favorites. I feel like it doesn't get talked enough about. Directed by Edward Ludwig, starring Richard Denning from Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's a fantastic movie. I love that film. Chris, are you familiar with the Black Scorpion?
Yes, I am. I actually really, really like the Black Scorpion. I remember when we first started talking about the giant spider, I think I told Mitch specifically I had in my head that I wanted to do this thing with the spider puppet to have that cheesy, insert shots of the face. Because I always thought that was so ridiculous in that movie, good way, where you have this great stop motion animation going, with these scorpions, and then it would cut to the this. I don't know. There's something about it that kind of pulls you out in a good way when you see this sort of cheesy scorpion face. And I wanted to recreate that. I don't know if we pulled it off exactly. I think ours is even cheesier, but that was something that I absolutely wanted to replicate for the giant spider.
That is something that I've always found a little, jarring with the Black Scorpion. Is that, you've got this wonderful Willis O'Brien stop motion, and then insert shot of the puppet face, which
exactly.
The first time I saw it, I'm like, what? Oh, come on, you just ruined it. But you kind of get used to it, and now it's just part of the thing, and it makes it a little bit more enjoyable because it's coming. And I I don't know. I would love to have seen more Willis O'Brien, I think, in that movie than we got, but we'll take what we can get, I guess.
Yep.
And then, you mentioned briefly, Tarantula, which, of course, John Agar. Any John Agar movie is going to have some love here on Monster Kid Radio.
Absolutely.
And I want to get back to these movies, but I got to ask, Chris, do you have a John Agar of the Mimiverse? I
don't know if we do quite yet, but I'm starting to feel like maybe it's Dan Sherman.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, so Dan's been in how many?
He's the actual star of only about two of them, actually. Or three of them, where he's been a major character, but he's been a minor character in, I think, one or two more. But he's one of those guys, much like John Agar, that he's got like a very distinct presence on screen. And he's always kind of playing a variation of, I'm guessing, himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what it is. He's just one of those people that he doesn't really particularly get lost in a character, but that's okay because his personality comes through and you like him. And I always said about Dan, and I think it's the kind of thing you get about John Agar, is that even when they're trying to sort of be a jerk, or they're trying to be, scoundrelly, if that's a word, scoundrel-ish. Even when they're trying to be sort of a jerk, they still come off as charming. And I think that's a rare quality to have that. And that's one of the things I like about working with Mr. Shervin. And it's one of the things I think, like I said, John Agar had too, is that he just, no matter how hard he tried in some of these films to seem like a womanizer or a bad, not nice guy or whatever, he still comes off as charming in a way that always works.
Exactly. And I think at one point, Chris, I recall, I think I texted you one time. I was watching a movie and I said, Dan Shervin reminds me of John Agar. I forget what movie I was watching, but I thought he would be the John Agar of the Mimiverse. Absolutely.
Yep.
Does Dan know that he's becoming the John Agar of the Mimiverse?
I don't think he does. I don't realize this, but I don't know if I necessarily want to, tell him.
to us, I guess, just to us, he is, and that's, I guess, what counts.
There you go. And he's in the Giant Spider. He's one of our leads.
He's probably the lead. He and Shannon McDonough are the two romantic leads and big stars of the film.
Yeah, he's the newspaper man trying to get to the bottom of what's going on in the town and help the general vanquish this giant spider.
And to kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier, is he a new character in the giant spider, or is he a recurring character to the Mimiverse in this?
He is a new character, but is related to a character from a previous film.
Excellent. And Shannon McDonough, also new character?
Shannon McDonough plays a completely new character, and she has a bad Polish accent.
Just
to shake things up a little bit, so you don't think she's playing the same character.
Now, she does seem to disappear into her roles in all the movies that I've seen her in. I mean, Dan, and I'm not, and I think I want to make it clear, we are speaking incredibly respectfully about what Dan does, but you're right. He is such a strong, charismatic personality. It's Dan. Shannon disappears into her roles in a different way.
Yeah, she's one of those actors who she'll sort of inhabit a character until there's no Shannon left. Aside from the looks, and even the looks, it's amazing how she does her own hair and makeup and has always done that. And she'll even go as far as doing subtle little touches of each character. I mean, the first character she played was called Julianne St. Marie, and she gave her these, this big head of curly hair and these very 50s housewife dresses and all these things. And she even, her method of speaking changes completely. And she does that. I mean, you can ask her to do the voice and she'll change her voice to sound like it. And she'll explain what she does. She's like, oh, Julianne's higher in the register. And then she played a character named Dr. Hackett in Attack of the Moon Zombies. And that's much closer to just her voice and her mannerisms, and she's sort of playing herself, aside from some of the histrionics and melodrama. But that's closer to her. But in this film, she plays a character named Zita Marczek, and she's a Polish. Because I realized one of the things I hadn't done in any of my movies up to this point was throw in the character who was played by a, say, first generation, European, 40s, 50s, still has the accent. Maybe he's been here since they're little, but they still have that touch of an accent that they have. Stuff like, the Killer Shrews, was it she's Swedish or something, that actress? That kind of thing. So I thought, we got to do an actress who still has a bit of a European accent. And I went for Polish because I'm Polish to a certain extent. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do that. And Shannon took the challenge and, actually went, she got tapes to try and figure out the accent. And she did all this research to get her accent really well. I don't know how authentic it is, honestly, but she does a really good job. But to get to sort of the crux of the point, in her looks, I mean, she's obviously still herself, but she did research on, adding little touches that would be Polish. She put flowers in her hair, and they were very specific the way she did it. She added a beauty mark. And it's amazing how just adding that one little touch makes her look different. She inhabits a totally different person, and I'm always constantly amazed by how she does that. And like I said with Dan, it's like he comes in and just sort of gets the basics of how he has to change his personality, but it still shines through. And Shannon is much more of a get lost in the character kind of an actor. And I put them together specifically because I think they're, of the actors I've worked with, they're some of the most charismatic on screen, and people always respond to them. So I thought, I want to put my sort of two quote unquote biggest actors in a film together and see what happens. And I think it turned out really well.
Huge thanks to Mitch and Chris for getting up early on their Saturday morning to chat with us here at Monster Kid Radio about The Giant Spider and what they do as filmmakers. And we'll hear more in part 2 of that interview, which will be coming up in the next episode of Monster Kid Radio here in a couple of days. Again, you can find all of our contact information and everything else that you need to know over at our website at monsterkidradio.net, including our contact information if you want to get a hold of us or leave us a voicemail for an upcoming episode of the show. All original content of this episode is copyright Monster Kid Radio LLC and is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivations 3.0 Unported license. That does not extend to the song that we're going to go out on. This is from the Night Hobbs. It's a song called Spider Smash, and it appears in the soundtrack for The Giant Spider. You're going to hear another song by them called The Giant Spider in the next episode of Monster Kid Radio. So I'll see you in a few days for that. Again, thanks for listening, everybody.